Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about profection years, specifically water profection years, and what I've learned about the element of water in relation to our astrological chart, what it can show us, what it can, reveal in our lives, how to pay more attention to the water element in our charts, and just anything else that kind of comes to mind. So I'm currently experiencing a first house profection year in a water sign. And what this means, or what I've realized during my 12th house profection year, which was in an air sign, is that all of the elements become activated during profection years. So, for example, last year I experienced an Aquarius profection year. So Gemini and Libra are also naturally going to be activated. Now, the focal point of the year was very Aquarian, and the planet, the ruling planet of whatever sign you are experiencing a profection year, is the focal point. So although if you have any planets, right, if you have any planets in that sign, all of those signs are going to be activated, but specifically rulership of that planet is going to take precedence. So for example, let's say I didn't have any other planets in Aquarius. That would mean that I would have to look at Uranus or Saturn, depending on the system in which I'm using. For the sake of this video, I'm going to be using modern rulerships. So I would look to where Uranus is, and let's say Uranus was in Taurus, then I would look at the rulership of Taurus, which is Earth. I would look at where my sun sign is, look at the opposite, which is the earth sign. And wherever my earth sign is, that's the house in which let's say my 12th house profection year would be focused on. So if I had sun in Leo, no, that would make sense. If I had sun in Gemini in the 4th, then the rulership of Gemini is Mercury. Let's say I had Mercury in Capricorn, and the Capricorn was in the 11th house using whole signs. So this would mean that this would be, although it was a 12th house profection year, it's going to be kind of carried out in a very 11th house way, dealing with friends, dealing with associations and groups and networking. That's the way in which the 12th house, there will probably be a lot of losses or a lot of transcending topics related to the 11th house. So that's just a little blurb that I wanted to put there. But the sake of this video, like I said earlier, is about water signs. So the reason why I've been thinking a lot about water elements is, yes, I'm in a water perfection year, but also I started thinking about my last water perfection year, which was when I was 19, I believe, I think, or I was 20. I don't remember. But basically, I started thinking back to that perfection year, and I started to think back in my other water perfection year, all of the water perfection years that I can remember most recently, and kind of the themes that I've seen throughout them all, and how they've shared similar themes, although the focal point was, of course, depending on where the rulership of that particular sign, wherever that sign is. So what I find really interesting about relationships is that we often, or I can say me, I often attribute relationships to air signs. And air is more associated with communication and with mental activity and with knowledge and information and, intellectual things. And although, air sign is very much associated with socialization as well, considering Libra is that very social sign in relation to social class and attraction in that way, I thought it was really interesting that I never really look at connection and, in relation to water element. And although we do look at, I know that a lot of us, we do look at waters in water, right? Synastry in the 4th, 8th, and 12th house, and things like that. We notice that they're very intense and whatnot, right? But I started to just want to just dig a little bit deeper into what water meant in relation to connection, in relation to chemistry, in relation to attraction, and just how much water, whether it be Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, is like entrenched in that. So water holds memory, if you didn't already know. And what I noticed with all of the water signs, right, is that there is a blueprint or a foundation as it relates to connection, who we're connected to, and the details of those connections. So there is one way is to look at your synastry with someone, see if you guys have those water houses connections. And I also want to put it out there that not everybody's 4th, 8th, and 12th house is a water house. So that's another thing too. If your 4th house is Leo, then your 4th, 8th, and 12th houses are fire signs. Okay, that's just how I do my astrology. So somebody who has fire in the, like I said, in the 4th, 8th, and 12th, they would have water in the 3rd, 7th, and 11th. So that's their water houses. Okay, so if you have water synastry in your chart, that means that where your water houses are, that is where another person's water houses meet up, or something's happening in your water houses, something's going on in their water houses. It's not only limited to the 4th, 8th, and 12th. Honestly, the 4th, 8th, and 12th is for fire risings. So, but like I said, that's how I do my astrology. Regardless of how you do your astrology, water, the whole point of this video is to talk about water. Okay, so in relation to, like, let's start with Cancer, right? So Cancer is most associated with the home. Cancer is most associated with family, the mother, nurture, and security, especially emotional security and what that entails. Okay, something that I find really interesting is that nowadays in our society, there's this big emphasis on connection. This big emphasis on connection through, like, very airy type of, Aquarius, Libra, Gemini energy versus kind of how it was before with Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. And Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, that's always going to be there, but I'm just, like, seeing not necessarily the shift of the dynamics, but more so, like, just the shift of, I guess, how I see or how I saw connection. Okay, so, and another thing too is that with water signs, especially water signs who feel disconnected, so you would have to see what water signs specifically that you kind of most associate yourself with, or you most resonate with, or is mostly encompassing in your chart. So for me, it's Pisces. And so Pisces is more associated with universal love, more associated with compassion, forgiveness, and belonging, like truly belonging, belonging in the grand scheme of belonging, right? So I noticed that, for example, Pisces can go through bouts of depression or a series of not feeling like they belong in the grand scheme of it all. Okay, feeling very disconnected from everything. And then as it relates to people who have heavy Cancerian energy, it could be feeling disconnected from the mother, or feeling disconnected from motherhood in general, whether you identify as a woman or man, just feeling disconnected from that. So that could mean, like, you feel disconnected from nurturance, or caregiving, or, like I said, emotional security, and these things can kind of make you feel separated, you know what I mean? And then Scorpio is mostly associated with, like, retribution and death, and this kind of, like, payback energy. Okay, so I forgot what I said in relation to Scorpio, but Scorpio has to do with like bloodlines and this connection, I feel like, to relating to others, if that makes sense. There was a way that I said it like way better like earlier before I started the video, but it was in relation to Scorpio, you know, again being tied to the blood, and Scorpio being very ancestral. You know, like, yes, I know we associate also Cancer with ancestors, but I feel like Scorpio can also, you know, take that reign too, because it has to do with blood and the bloodline. Okay, because remember, if you're thinking about Cancer or even Pisces, but specifically Cancer, right? Let's say in a past life you actually had a great relationship with your mother, and then maybe this life you didn't, right? You can always kind of lean onto that past life feeling that you had with your mother, especially like if you know her in this life. Let's say she's like your best friend, or she's your sister or something like that. Like, you can always lean on that versus let's say like everybody in your lineage, the lineage that you came into this life, has some sort of like terrible relationship with their mother. I'm not going to get too deep into that because I'm going off into another tangent about something else, and I'm going to confuse myself, and I don't want to do that. So let's get into, you know, like I said, with water. So the best example that I had was Romeo and Juliet. And it was so interesting because I always used to, even when I was younger, I was like, why are they so hell-bent on Romeo and Juliet? Like, doesn't matter what school I went to a couple of schools, different schools too. Like, I'm talking about economically different. And no matter what, you were going to be taught Romeo and Juliet. And I thought that shit was so weird, amongst other things, a part of that. But anywho, what I'm trying to say is Romeo and Juliet is the perfect water type of relationship. And I know that I've heard Romeo and Juliet is like a twin flame story. That's another topic for another day for another YouTuber. But I do see Romeo and Juliet in regards to the water signs. So Cancer being the family and the family feud, right? Then you have Scorpio being that they died, being that they had to keep their love a secret. And then Pisces, they were, oh, I'm sorry. Pisces being that, okay, let me go ahead. Lord Jesus. Okay, sorry. And Pisces being that they were casted out, and I think in the end their families ended up forgiving each other. So all of that, you know, all of that having to deal with connection. Okay, the main reason why I even why this came to me, right, because this was like a download. The main reason why this came to me is because I started to think about people that we have strong, intense connections with. And there's a show on Show. Is it called Show, or is it something else? Showtime. There's a show on Showtime. It's also on Netflix. I don't remember what it's called. And every time I think about the show, which is like one of my favorite shows, I always forget what it's called for a reason. But anywho, it's a show about a woman who goes through these stones, and she ends up meeting with like a lover, and she ended up coming back. And I'm pretty sure I probably talked about it in one of these videos, but I always, Outlander. Okay, so the reason why I mentioned Outlander is, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, there's times where Captain John, I believe his name is, and Jamie, so Captain John had raped Jamie. And of course, later on down the line, Claire ended up marrying descendant of that man. Okay. Now, yes, the show is talking about time travel and things of that nature. But in relation to what I'm talking about, I see the show more so in a Claire is embodying her great times, whatever, grandmother. Okay. And so the intense trauma that Jamie experienced, okay, is going to like not necessarily passed down, but what I'm trying to say is, let's say for example, John's descendant and Jamie's descendant in the normal way, right? they went to school together and they came across each other. And there was just this very intense feeling between the two that they couldn't quite understand. It's probably usually one of them, especially the society that we live in today, right? Just being like psychically attacked all the time and stuff like that. But let's say one of them just felt this very strong feeling towards this guy, and he just did not understand why, right? Now, we could go into depth about what the feeling is. Obviously, do the meditations, let it come to you, be open to receiving, etc. But oftentimes what I've noticed is that we don't know the connection that we share with people. We just know that it's really intense. And a lot of these intense feelings, we may feel like it's love. We may feel like, oh, this person's meant to be in my life and all this stuff. And what I've noticed is that is not always the case. Usually it just means that, I'm not saying that what happened with John and Jamie happened in your family, but what I'm saying is that something very intense happened. There's a bond, right? Scorpio rules over bond. There's a very intense bond between the descendants of your family, or that person, right, that happened to, or that experienced that, and that person in their family that experienced that. And now you guys are coming together in the present day, not necessarily trying to figure it out because, but that feeling is still there. It's always going to be there until a debt has been paid. So this is where we get more into scorpionic energy. So I started to think about fatal attractions and crimes of passion. Okay. And I started to think about crimes of passion and fatal attraction being like a retribution. Okay. In the sense of the person who is stalking, who is obsessed, who is like dangerous, is the conduit of somebody in their lineage feeling like the other person slighted them, did them wrong, betrayed them, and they want payback. Now, that's probably not always the case, and that is simply a theory. That is simply a download that came, because I don't want to just say things and then it's kind of like, so you're trying to say that like everything starts in the spiritual. That's all I'm gonna say, okay? But when we are, especially like I said, with these types of attractions, right, pining over them, stuff like that, yes, I do think, and the fact that it came, right, is that there is some sort of unresolved karma between these families. Okay, that's what I think Romeo and Juliet were. They were the ones that were there to resolve the family karma, and they died in the process. Then you have Pisces, forgiveness. Okay. So, let me wait, because I wrote some notes. I wrote a little notey note or two about this. Okay. So, the attraction, depending on what it is, right, is a reminder of a debt that hasn't been paid. Okay. So, yeah, that's it about that. Let's go into profection years. So yeah, I really love profection years. I love studying them, and seeing how they play in my life, and seeing how they play in the lives of those that I care about. I definitely suggest looking at, depending on what element you are going through, looking at all of the elements and where they are showing, how those the signs of those same elements are showing themselves. So if I didn't already mention, I'm in a water profection year, so Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio is highlighted. times 1,000. And remember that water is associated with feelings and emotions and the past and memories and connection, you know? So this all came about, I think I explained this earlier in the video, but I didn't remember then, but this came about because I just started to think about connection, like I said, and that, like, how, like, important connection is in my life, especially as a water rising, especially, you know, my connection to, like, everything, you know, and that's kind of what even started, like, everything in my life. I always say I woke up, you know, after I did acid, because before then I never really felt like I belonged, you know, and I did acid during my 9th house profection year, which was in Scorpio. And my Jupiter is in Pisces, not saying that has to do with Pisces, not saying that has to do with Scorpio, but my Pluto does make an aspect to Pisces though. So it completely changed how I enter this reality, if I want to say. And I always say, like, you know how they say before Christ, after Christ? Yeah, it's before acid, after acid, which is like the same thing, right? Before Christ, after Christ. And that's really like how I see my life. So that's pretty much all I have to say about water right now. I'm definitely going to come back and make another video about water. I'm in my water profection, so I'm going to, you know, share as much information as comes to me that is meant to be shared. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment, and I'll see you guys in my next video.